आवाज, आपका करिश्मा अद्भुत है। आपने अपने जादू से सारी दुनिया को मोह लिया है। चाहे वो हॉलीवुड में ऑक्टोपसी हो, बॉलीवुड में खून भरी मांग हो या इटाली में सैंडोकन हो, आपका स्वागत है यहाँ पर। कृपया तालियों से स्वागत कीजिए।
मैं ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि मैं इंदौर से बहुत ही प्रभावित हूँ। जैसे मैं देवी अहिल्याबाई होलकर इंटरनेशनल एयरपोर्ट में पहुंचा और वहाँ ये बहुत बड़ी फोटोग्राफ्स देखी महलों की, और जो श्रद्धांजलि बनाई गई थी रानी अहिल्याबाई के लिए, मुझे एहसास हुआ कि मैं एक शहर में आ रहा हूँ जिसका बहुत पुराना इतिहास है, जिसकी बहुत गहरी परंपराएं हैं, और एक बहुत ख़ास जगह मैं पहुंचा हूं। और मेरी इच्छा थी कि मैं इंदौर के बारे में और जानूं, और वैसे भी आने से पहले भी मैं प्रभावित था, क्योंकि कल ही मैंने अखबारों में पढ़ा कि फॉर द 5th टाइम इंदौर को क्लीनेस्ट सिटी इन इंडिया का खिताब मिला। ये कमाल की अचीवमेंट है, ये कोई छोटी अचीवमेंट नहीं। इस सारे शहरों में से लेके आपको एक खिताब मिला, और पहली बार नहीं 5वीं बार। तो ह्यूज कंग्रेचुलेशंस टू ऑल पीपल इन इंदौर फॉर दिस ग्रेट अचीवमेंट। Please carry on.
Thank you, sir.
Please carry on.
You know, sir, you have been a teenage crush of so many generations of women. So when I got a call from Praveenji and Naveenji to conduct this session, I was like a 16-year-old girl gushing. And it's really a dream come true to be talking to you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, my first question to you is, like when I read your book, Stories I Must Tell, the emotional journey of an actor, I felt that it is such a visual book, such a graphic book. It is such a graphic book. So I just wanted to know, ऐसा लगता है इस बुक को पढ़ के कि सब चीज हमारे सामने चल रही है, like a movie. So how did you relive those moments, and how were you able to put that in so much of detail?
You know, my book is titled Stories I Must Tell, but the subtitle of the book is The Emotional Life of an Actor. So firstly, I had this debate in my mind as to how to tell my story, because I've led a very extraordinary and unusual life across 3 continents, 3 of the biggest film industries, done all kinds of projects across the world and in Bollywood. And there was a lot I had to say, but if I said it all, it would be a 1,000-page book. Nobody reads 1,000-page books today. I mean, there might be some of you, but in general. And I had this insight at the beginning of the pandemic that I would tell it through the most important stories in my life. That's why these are stories I must tell, because they're stories that are central to my life, that defined my life. And I was able to tell it through an emotional prism, not just I went there, I met so-and-so, I had a relationship with so-and-so, and I moved on, there were complications. And I wanted people to share that experience, to be in the room with me. Because, you know, nobody knows what happens between a man and a woman. Only they know. Unless one of them tells you in great detail what happened. And that's what I've done. Not in all the relationships, because as I said again, it became a 1,000-page book. But in key moments of key relationships, what were the scenes? What were the dramas? What were the dilemmas? What were the decisions that had to be taken? And how did one confront this emotional situation? These are things I have taken great care to flesh out in my book. When I started writing my book, my big fear was that I won't remember enough of my life. I thought, okay, but just put down what you do remember. And putting down what I did remember, I remembered even more. So I was able to give more depth to things. Certain things I had kept notes on in my life, and I was able to go back to them. Other things, when I wrote about, they kind of came awake in my mind. And so it's a very emotional book. It's not just a story of achievements, it's a story of setbacks, not just triumphs, but of tragedies, not just of my strength, but of my frailties as well. And I thought, let me just tell it from the point of view of a man's emotion, because men are very often afraid to let out their emotion and to put things the way they see it. They are supposed to be the strong ones, the protectors, the ones who take responsibility, don't cry, etc. Well, we also have feelings. We also have universes going on inside us. And I wanted to put down not only what happened, but how I saw it, how I felt. So I share that with you. And that was the objective of my book. And the fact that it has touched so many people leads me to believe that I've succeeded to some extent.
Yeah. Sir, one more thing. Like when you were writing your book, what rediscoveries did you make about yourself?
Not so much rediscoveries, but I was able to look back on my younger self with greater understanding, with more forgiveness than I had probably at that time. Because I think, oh God, I ruined this one. It shouldn't have happened like this. I should have done this. I should have done that. I tried my best. So I was very hard on myself. In retrospect, I was able to say, it's okay. You're not Superman. You make mistakes too. And you mourn for that, you move on. So I was able to see myself with more compassion, and other people too. Because when relationships happen and they're very intense and things break up and there's great feelings going on, there's a lot of finger pointing and you were wrong and you were wrong. Now you look back and with more compassion on yourself and the other people. And you can write about it with that maturity, with that sense of kindness. So it wasn't so much, it was more a rediscovery of looking at myself. Of course, it was cathartic in a way because I had to go through and live through many of the emotions of some of my most turbulent, emotional and professional times. And it's easy to write about the good parts. I was the big star in Europe, I won this award, I went here, I did the Bond film, I did Bold and Beautiful. All that's the easy stuff. The hard part is dealing with the stuff that's raw and real and emotional.
Very true, sir. You really said it well. It is rediscovery of yourself. और actually, I think किताब एक माध्यम है जिससे लोग आपको बेहतर जान सकते हैं. सर आपने
उम्मीद तो वही थी.
बिल्कुल हुआ है ये, क्योंकि इसके पहले हम शायद आपको इतने अच्छे से नहीं जानते थे. I have read it twice and really loved your writing style.
Thank you so much.
सर आपने किताब में मेंशन किया है कि आपका बीटल्स के साथ इंटरव्यू था जिसने आपकी जिंदगी दिशा बदल दी. Believe me, I also think पता नहीं शायद आज मेरी भी लाइफ चेंज है. You know, talking to a dynamic personality like you, 70 plus के बाद में भी you are so fit and so handsome.
Thank you.
When I walked out of All India Radio, I had faced an existential question. What the hell was I to do with myself? That's narration from your book. आपने अपनी किताब में लिखा है कि शायद आप आर्किटेक्ट बनना चाहते थे. सर, आई एम एन आर्किटेक्ट. आई बिलीव मी, हमारे फ्रेटर्निटी में इतने हैंडसम और डैशिंग आर्किटेक्ट्स होना वुड हैव बीन अ प्रिविलेज फॉर अस.
थैंक यू सो मच, मोस्ट काइंड.
सर, आपने लिखा है कि आपने काफ़ी प्रोफेशंस के बारे में विचार किया इस दिशा में आने के पहले. आई थिंक राइटर, जर्नलिस्ट, पॉलिटिक्स, डॉक्यूमेंट्री फिल्म मेकर, टूरिस्ट गाइड, प्रोड्यूसर एंड ऑल्सो फिल्म डायरेक्टर. तो आपकी क्या स्ट्रेंथ्स एंड आपकी खूबियाँ हैं जिसने आपको इस दिशा में प्रेरित किया? लाइक यू आर पहले आई थिंक यू स्टार्टेड विद एडवर्टाइजमेंट डायरेक्शन, दैन एज अ मॉडल एंड देन एज एन एक्टर. तो कैसे आप इस दिशा में आगे बढ़ते गए और आपको लगा ये आपका पैशन है?
ये तो पूरी किताब हुई मेरी. I have, I'm a middle-class boy from Delhi. And I say middle class in the sense that my parents never had much money. They were great idealists, freedom fighters, people who took care of refugees, who moved to religion. My mother became the highest ranked Buddhist nun in the world. My father became a leading philosopher, spent more than 20 years of his life in Italy. So when I say middle class boy, I meant economically middle class. Culturally, intellectually, it was a very rich family. They knew a lot of the great freedom fighters personally, Nehru, Subhash Chandra Bose, Gyani Zail Singh, Harkrishan Singh Surjit, Indore Gujral, who became Prime Minister. All these were their friends. But Indira Gandhi. So a middle-class boy from Delhi becomes a star in Europe. But along the way, I always reinvented myself, because when I interviewed the Beatles, which is where I begin my book, how I interviewed the Beatles, and what happened in that fantastic interview and how I got the interview.
That's very well described in the book.
That you must read for yourselves. But the aftermath of that was when I went to All India Radio to say, please give me a copy of the tape that you have broadcast. And they said to me, we can't find it. And it turns out they'd erased it because they had to reuse tapes. They had so little money. It just shattered me. But I've always felt, and I've discovered this throughout my life, that crises are your moments of opportunity. Crises are your moments of power. Because normally we go down a set of rails, almost on autopilot, life is going on, and suddenly something happens and shakes up your reality completely. And you think it's the end of the world. It could be loss of a job, could be loss of a loved one, could be loss of a way of life, whatever. You feel this can't be any worse. But if you see the fact that you can re-look at your life and reorder your priorities and work towards something else, it becomes your point of power. And that's what happened with me. After the disillusionment with All India Radio, although I must thank them because they set me on a different course, I set off for Bombay with 700 rupees in my pocket to find another life in Bombay. This transformation has always happened. I joined advertising. I was the film chief of Lintas and then Ogilvy and Mather. I worked in advertising for 5 years. And then I had to choose whether to join Bollywood or stay in advertising. And, I was doing very well in advertising. I won Asian Awards. To leave the security of that corporate structure and to enter the uncharted waters of Bollywood was a huge decision. But I took the leap of faith. Then there was a choice of, do you want to become an international actor and leave behind everything that all the fame that you've got with Bollywood? And Bollywood did make me famous with my early films. I took that gamble as well, moved on internationally. I spent more than 25 years of my life abroad. Most of my career has been abroad. In fact, my biggest hit film, Khoon Bhari Maang, happened when I was in the middle of my American phase. And I was shooting with Tom Selleck for Magnum PI in Hawaii when I got this call from Rakesh Roshan saying, come for Khoon Bhari Maang. And to cut a long story short, I came back. And then that became my most successful Hindi film. But I've always had to transform myself. And now I've even transformed myself into a writer and become an author. So there's no end to a creative person's journey. You find new ways of expressing yourself, new ways of because my effort, my desire from the time I left Delhi was that I want to do something that touches the lives of people in some ways, that affects them in some ways, and they know who I am, and they feel, and somehow I've changed something for the better in their lives. That was my motivation. And it led me from one change to another.
Yeah, very true, sir.
Sir, Sandokan, Italy में and Europe में super duper hit था, and you were a superstar there. When I read the book, उसमें the way it is described, the fan following that you have, and that also led to you being awarded as knighted the highest order of Italy. So I would like to know, sir, कि आपके इस journey में आपको कौन से instances बहुत ज़्यादा मतलब इफेक्ट किया उन्होंने आपकी लाइफ में, एंड कुछ स्पेशल इंस्टेंसेस कुछ आप डिस्क्राइब करेंगे when you were Sandokan in Italy and you were there and you had such a great fan following.
You know, I was fortunate enough to be cast in a series that became iconic in Italy. I can't take credit for the series. Sergio Solema, who wrote the project, directed it, envisaged it. I call him the father of Sandokan. He's the man that created the project. He's the man who had the courage to cast an unknown actor from Bollywood in a European miniseries that was made by France, Germany, and Italy. So I have to thank him for everything that followed. But what did follow was the kind of success that actors dream about but very rarely see. It was Beatlemania on the streets of Italy. And it was an extraordinary experience to see that. And you know, there was a time, I'd gone to Italy with Parveen Babi, who was with me at the time. And there was a time before we left, on my first visit, before we left Italy, when we were living in the Excelsior Hotel in Rome. And we looked down from our hotel room across the street to the newsstand. Every magazine in the newsstand had pictures of me or Sandokan or me and Parveen across the thing. And it was one of those magical moments that you felt, my God, I have become a star in a country far from home. And I got goosebumps just thinking about it and looking at it and saying, I'm so blessed that this has happened to me. And there were, there were tears of joy in my eye when I saw that. It was one of those moments. And then, as a result of that, to be asked by Federico Fellini, the god of cinema, to meet you, to have Bertolucci wanting to meet you, another Bertolucci, to have Sergio Leone asked to see you, and have these wonderful meetings and conversations with them. Audrey Hepburn, I've detailed a beautiful conversation I had with Audrey Hepburn at a beach house in Sardinia, and it was wonderful meeting her because she said, I said, what are you doing here? She said, I'm married to an Italian. I said, what happened to Mel Ferrer? Because last I knew she was married to Mel Ferrer. She said, no, that ended long ago. I'm married to Andrea now. I said, what does he do? He's a psychologist. So I said, how do you balance living in Rome and acting in Hollywood? She said, I don't think about Hollywood a lot these days. So I said, what do you think about? She said, I think about the children in the world who are hungry, who go to sleep without a square meal. Because the truth of the matter is, we can feed them. We just don't. We don't have the will. We have enough grain, enough food for them, but we don't feed them. And I was very touched by what she said. And she later went on to devote her life to helping children, became a UN ambassador, and was eventually given the highest civilian honor in America, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, for the work she did in helping people and children in underprivileged children in countries in Africa and Asia.
That's incredible.
These were magic. And also she said to me, do you know Tagore? I said, well, I don't know Tagore personally, but I did spend a year of my life in Shantiniketan. And she said, I love his poetry. He's such magical words. And we started talking about Tagore before we were interrupted. These were the magical moments that came out of success in Italy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that I certainly enjoyed greatly.
Thank
That's
you so
incredible,
much.
sir.
Just-
That's very true. So, actually, of course, success is one time, but सभी को दूर के ढोल काफ़ी सुहाने लगते हैं. Especially, common man does not understand the pain that an actor takes before he comes to the stage or what he is today. सर आपने एक इंसिडेंट बताया था जिसमें आपके पास रोम में कपड़े खरीदने के लिए पैसे नहीं थे. And another incident when in LA आप bankrupt हो गए थे.
That's right.
तो these were really tough times जब आपके सारे investments fail हो रहे थे, सारे auditions fail हो रहे थे, but still you stood strong. तो आपके tough times के बारे में आप public को बताएं.
You know, like I said, my book is not just about triumphs, it's about tragedies, not just about achievements, about setbacks. And from the heights of success in Italy, when I went to Hollywood, I had to audition for roles. And I did quite well initially because I got a film with Michael Caine called Ashanti. I did the James Bond film. I was the first Indian actor to be cast in a James Bond film. I also acted in The Bold and the Beautiful for almost a year, which a lot of people saw in the 90s. And it's one of the biggest series in the world. But the fact is that Hollywood was not writing roles for Asians. And I had to diversify the types of roles that I played. Eventually, I made some very bad investments, which absolutely bankrupted me. So from being a superstar in Italy, I went to bankruptcy at a certain point in the late 90s. And I actually filed physically for bankruptcy in the courts of Los Angeles, which I've chronicled in my book. How do you rise from that? Because, you know, anybody going bankrupt is hard enough. But when a celebrity goes bankrupt, he's in the glare of in the public eye. You have supposed to keep a certain lifestyle. Being a man who was married and divorced, I had alimony to deal with, I had children to educate. There were a lot of things that I had to deal with at the time of bankruptcy. The pressure was immense. What gave me the strength was really, firstly, the example of my parents, how they handled financial, not having money, and yet somehow persevering. The only thing they did was they sacrificed a lot to give us a good education. Other than that, they had virtually nothing. Their spirit gave me strength. But also, I had been myself a Buddhist monk in Burma, and I had learnt the techniques of Vipassana from Mahasi Sayadaw, who was the guru of Goenkaji, who brought Vipassana to India. And that turning of Vipassana and meditation gave me the strength to go back into myself and to remember the spirit of the boy that left Delhi to make a new life for himself. And it gave me back confidence in myself.
So you are a regular Vipassana practitioner?
Sorry?
Are you a regular Vipassana practitioner?
Pretty regular. Less these days.
Okay.
Less these days. But I practiced it very rigorously for a number of years, especially in my worst times, because it gave me my greatest strength.
Okay. So you do go to the centers? Or
No. I know the techniques
All right.
and I use them. Occasionally, sometimes things happen in meditation which you just cannot understand. Then I go to one of the gurus and say, what happened here? What does this mean? And they tell you, they guide you. It's very important to have a guide when you meditate, especially when you begin, because when you start observing the mind and the way the mind works, it can be quite unsettling and scary also at times. So you need somebody to guide you through that, who's been there, who knows what you're going through. But having had that initial training and then more sessions afterwards, I always had this as a resource. So that gave me a lot of strength to do it. But above all, I think positivity.
Yeah, true.
If you ask me what has kept me going throughout the years, through good times and bad, it's positivity.
Yes.
And it's very hard because negativity is a very seductive thing. It's around you. People around you are negative. They try and draw you in by bad-mouthing other people, by pulling other people down, by, I'm saying, I don't like people who have a drain inspector's view of the world. कि हर चीज में नुक्स ढूंढना, हर चीज में बुराई करना, हर चीज आप उससे उभरते थोड़ी हैं. You've only got so much time, so much energy. You can use it running people down, running others down, but is it elevating you? So I've always believed in the power of positivity, and that's what's seen me through my worst times and been with me in my best times.
Yeah, sir. I think यही struggle के time पे, this was the time when you also faced your son's death. I think आपके son Siddharth के chapter, उससे it hurt that he hadn't written a single line for me. That was such an honest confession of a hurt father. So actually, I brought this topic here today just to let people know that it is not always bed of roses for the actor. It is कांटे और पत्थर सभी होते हैं आपकी दिशा में. And भी आपका काफी tough समय था जब आपके बेटे का I think suicide हुआ था.
I have dealt with people with mental health problems very closely. Parveen Babi had mental health problems. My son Siddharth turned schizophrenic. I had to deal with that. So I've seen it very up close in various manifestations. And the chapter on my son is really the story of a father trying to prevent his son from committing suicide. And that was one of the most painful chapters in the book for me to write, because the opening line is something like, the red flags of warning went up when my son talked to me of suicide as we walked along Santa Monica Beach in the glow of a setting sun. So you start off the chapter with your son saying, talking about suicide. And the rest of the chapter is about how one tries to prevent him and how I failed in the end. Now, I want to say, and very honestly, that today's medicines are a lot better. Today's understanding of schizophrenia and mental conditions is far better. They are more curable, more manageable than ever before.
Yeah, parents are more aware.
So this should not be seen as a tale of despair. It should be seen as a case in itself at that time. And here was a boy, my son, beautiful looking boy, 25 years old, graduate of Carnegie Mellon University, the foremost college of information technology in the world, at the dawn of the information age. And he gets schizophrenia. How do you deal with it? That's the chapter.
That was really touching, Kafi.
Very touching, sir. And we cannot imagine how you would have gone through this. And and what advice would you give to people who can release their stress and lead a stress-free life?
I'd give advice in two situations. One is that whatever the afflicted person is feeling, and however warped their view might be, they feel love, they feel your love. And my son felt my love. It's just that he came to a conclusion that thinking was his life, and he could not imagine the rest of his life living in this vegetative, numbed state. But he felt my love. And so never stop giving love to the person who's afflicted, even if they madden you, even if they drive you crazy at times. But more importantly, think also of the caregivers, the ones who look after the people with afflictions. because they sometimes suffer more than the patient. A person with schizophrenia may not feel pain because he's schizophrenia. He may not see his actions as weird. But the caregiver has to constantly adjust to what is happening and turn their whole lives around to take care of this person. So two things. One is, I think we should remove the shame, the stigma, the secrecy surrounding mental illness. It's like a physical illness that has solutions. The second thing is there should be far more compassion and understanding for the caregiver, because they are giving up so much to take care of people that they love.
Yeah, really, very true, sir. So moving on, आपके पंजाबी सिख पिता श्री बाबा बेदी जी and English mother फ्रेडा बेदी, इन्होंने जब आपका मतलब पूरा, it was very unconventional at that time when they were at Oxford. It was very okay. And they were a part of the freedom struggle of India also. ये तो मुझे पता ही नहीं था कि you come from जो आज़ादी के लिए लड़े हैं उनकी फैमिली से and गुरु नानक की लेगेसी से भी. आपकी मदर हाईएस्ट ऑर्डर ऑफ बुद्धिस्ट नन भी बनी. इन सब बातों से आपके ऊपर क्या, आपके फॉर्मेटिव ईयर्स में क्या इफेक्ट आया? एंड ऑल्सो एज यू सेड कि यू ऑल्सो योरसेल्फ बिकेम अ मॉन्क. सो व्हाट really, what you can say, affected you the most in your formative years?
Well, you know, as you just said, my mother became a Buddhist nun. My father's from the tradition of Guru Nanak, a descendant of Guru Nanak. And so that spirituality ran through the family. I certainly was affected by it. Till today, I draw a lot of my values from Sikhism and Buddhism. But what I also inherited from them was a great spiritual curiosity. You know, all organized religions give us ways to live by. They give us a set of beliefs that are common to us. And so we have a sense of belonging to a community. We are united by religions as being whatever religion we are. And all of them preach human values. But philosophically, they're saying very different things. Philosophically, one religion says there's destiny, somebody says there's free will. Somebody says you die and go to heaven or hell. Somebody says no, you get reborn. Somebody says God judges you, somebody says no, karma judges you. One God, many gods. So my question was, what is the truth of the matter? They can't all be telling the truth. What is the truth that resonates for me as an individual? My mother found her truth in Buddhism, my father in his Sikh roots, as well as his own very remarkable philosophy, which I've talked about in my book. But what is the truth that resonates for me? What should I believe? Should I believe in free will or destiny? Rebirth or not? So there's one chapter in my book about my beliefs and what I believed once and how my beliefs have changed and what I've come to believe now. Because that's a very interesting journey, and it's hard for me to even distill it into one chapter, but it's even harder to distill into a soundbite here. But just to give you an example, I do believe in rebirth. I believe in the phenomenon of rebirth. There are too many cases on record. Even the story of how they found the Dalai Lama is an amazing affirmation of rebirth. That a country, after the death of its spiritual and temporal leader, goes to the far reaches of the empire, picks the son of a peasant and says, you are our spiritual and temporal leader. They must have a lot of faith in in my belief system on reincarnation to hand over power to the son of a peasant who turns out to be such a remarkable man. So, this and many other cases, I believe in reincarnation. Whether it happens to everybody, I don't know.
Yeah.
It can happen in exceptional cases. It may happen to all, I don't know. I don't know. But I know that the phenomenon of rebirth is there and does happen, and I believe in it. So, in that sense, I believe in free will. I don't believe in destiny. You can say you make your own destiny, but the fact is, free will is what determines your destiny. Karma, I'm not sure in the sense that is commonly believed is true. I'm not sure who's exactly keeping a bank balance up there of what are my good deeds or bad deeds. But certainly every action has a reaction.
Yes.
If I kick a dog for no reason, in some way I've scarred myself. In some way I've brutalized myself in doing that. And that will have some effect on me because of other things I do that will come back on me. So there may be a sort of cause and effect in that sense. Who's keeping my karmic bank balance, I don't know. But there is a cause and effect. So my beliefs are nuanced. They're not radical yes or no.
Yeah.
And I won't go into all my beliefs because there isn't time. But just to give you an idea as to how I've arrived at my beliefs and what I believe today.
Good to know, sir, that a dynamic personality, an actor like you, has a spiritual heart. Sir, Ramblings on a Beach, a short story when you were just 29. Actually, this shows you are author by heart since a very early age. पूजा और ग्रैंडडॉटर अलाया में से आपकी strong bonding किसके साथ है? And what kind of relationship do you share with them?
Pooja and I shared a very wonderful relationship. Then we had a big falling out about 7, 8 years ago. And it was a very public spat, and I was very wounded by it. But at the end of the day, we made our peace. We're loving father and daughter again. And I'm very proud of all that she's doing. I am so proud of Alaya, and I'm so fond of her also, because she has achieved everything that she's achieved, including winning the debut Filmfare Award as Best Debut Actress, entirely on her own. She really worked for it. She actually got into New York, NYC, in the directing department. Okay. And that's something people will kill for. You know, it's the most prime school to go to learn directing. And she gave it up after 1 year saying, it doesn't feel right, it's not who I am. And she'd been resisting the idea of acting because everyone expected her to. Okay. And then she said, no, why am I resisting this? This is what I want to do. So she went and trained, and she really worked very, very hard, unbelievably hard, on all aspects of her acting. And she has made me very proud, and I say here that she will be one of the most important actresses of her generation because she has the talent and the will, the skill, and the drive to do it.
So I did see your interview with her. She is really charming. Sir, आपकी mom, I think 1966 में she became Buddhist nun when you were just 20 and you had siblings also. So what was your reaction and how did you take it? So, were you in favor of it? Were you all right with it? How did it go?
अब आप मेरी पूरी किताब मुझसे सुनाना चाहते हैं?
Sir, glimpse देंगे तो everybody will find it attractive to read.
Let me say, in that instance, you know, I was very angry with my mother when I saw she'd become a nun, even though I'd been part of her journey in Buddhism. Because we were very close, and we would discuss Buddhism and discuss philosophical things, even though I was young, a teenager. And then she suddenly became a Buddhist monk without telling me about it. I felt it was betrayal. I was very angry with her. In time, I realized that, you know, if she told me about it, she would have had to tell the other children, she would have to tell everybody, everybody would have resisted her decision. It would have been a problem for her. So she just, at the time she said, who decides when an apple falls to the ground? It was time, the apple was ripe, it fell to the ground. And there's a beautiful letter that she wrote to me and my sister after that, when she felt our pain. I won't repeat it here, but read the letter. One of the lines she says, in your childhood, I protected and sheltered you. Now I am the one who needs protection and shelter.
Yes, yeah. Sir, moving off track a little bit, say you have worked in Hollywood, Bollywood, European, author, everything, hai na? Even South Indian films also. When I researched, I found that you have won an award for South Indian film also.
Yeah,
so now what is the next move?
I got the Best Villain Award for a Malayalam film. I just finished a Telugu film on the legend of Shakuntala, which they make a big budget film.
Oh, great.
And I do lots of things.
Yeah, so next move, sir, are you going to disclose it? Or it's going to be a surprise?
See, as far as acting is concerned, acting is not something I can predict what my next move is because the offer comes from other people. Somebody will say, I want you. Will you do this role? And I say, okay, I'll do the role. Or I won't do the role. But that initiative has to come from somebody else. What is in my hands is things like writing a book.
Yeah.
I've written a book. It's become a national bestseller thanks to wonderful readers like you and the appreciation that I've received from wonderful reviewers. I've certainly enjoyed the process of writing. I have many other stories to tell.
Yes, I was just going to ask you, do you have many more stories to tell? And because when you read it, I think there are so many stories there that...
I couldn't tell them all because we have an Encyclopedia Britannica. But I certainly hope to write more stories.
Yeah.
But right now, I'll start that process in January. Because right now my book released, and I'm spreading the word here. But equally at the same time, my Italian book has also released. The Italian edition of my book has also released with the biggest publisher in Italy called Mondadori. So that's called Storie che vi devo raccontare, means stories I must recount to you. La mia avventura umana, which means my human adventure. So the emotional journey of an actor, they prefer to say my human journey. And it is a human journey that my book is about. The journey, the wondrous, magical, heartbreaking, saddening, outrageous, creative journey of being human and the miracle of being human, faults and all. And so that's what has given me great joy, and I hope that I can sit down and write again from January, whether that's more stories, whether that's a screenplay, whether that's even a fiction novel, I don't know.
Eagerly awaiting for that.
But the process of writing will continue, that much I do promise you.
Yeah, sure.
Sir, 3 wishes written by your father, Baba Bedi, that's very impressive, and I think that's true love. With
you've touched upon a very sensitive point here. My parents were, there's a chapter on my parents as well, and they were remarkable people, because Oxford graduates who gave up everything to fight for the freedom of the country. Each went their different ways, spiritually, even geographically, because my mother went up to live in the monastery, my father went off to Italy. But the bond that was there between them was a bond of soulmates. They always supported and respected each other. And that's an incredible story. And I end that chapter with something my father wrote called 3 Wishes of how he missed my mother, which brings tears to your eyes. I'll leave it to you to read, but it's truly one of the most beautiful pieces in my book.
Sir, I think you have had many women in your life. For whom do you think you can write the same 3 wishes?
Now you're asking to get me into trouble. Huh? I'm a happily married man. मेरा चौथा divorce मत करवाइए. But you know, even though I've been married 4 times now, divorced 3 times, for me there was a constant search for love. If I just wanted to have women, why did I need to get married? I could be in footloose and fancy free and do what I want without being accountable to anybody. This search for love has been constant, and I think I found a very beautiful companion in my present wife, Parveen, who I married 6 years ago, but we've been together for 15 years. And in fact, all my marriages were not short marriages. Nikki before that was 15 years. Ishel, the mother of my son Adam in Los Angeles, who was a beautiful, wonderful boy doing special effects in films. That was 7 years. Before that, Pratima was again 7 years. And then major other relationships in between. So it's not as though these are one-night stands. They are long-term relationships.
Okay.
One question.
Sure, we'll do that.
Okay, yeah,
Sir,
just-
actually, talking about खून भरी मांग, वो काफी लोग यहाँ पे जानते हैं, बहुत लोगों ने देखा है, and you were the villain there. वे खून भरी मांग. सर, आपने रेखा जी को उसमें crocodiles के बीच में फेंका है, and you don't know how many people are really angry with you because of that. How could you even do that in the studio? So they really need an answer for that. There are so many Rekha fans too.
You know, एक पूरी जनरेशन थी जो मुझसे डरती थी कि ये आदमी रेखा को crocodile में धकेलता है. And especially when children saw it, they all saw me as... But as they grow up, they see me in other films, they realize that, this guy's an actor. And the fact of the matter is, that's one of the reasons I got that role. Because Rakesh said to me, my film is a film where the hero turns into a villain. So no hero is willing to do this film in Bollywood. And if I put a villain from the start, then there'll be no surprise in the end. You're the only one who can do both. Has no image. You can turn from hero into villain, villain to hero. So that's why I want you. So that's why I got the role. So I don't have to explain why I did what I did. I'm an actor. I do what I do.
But you were the best suit for it. You were the best suit for it.
Thank you.
सर एक और आई थिंक आपने एक और किस्सा मेंशन किया था पृथ्वीराज कपूर जी का कि इनिशियली उनके आई थिंक वो स्टार बने ही वाज अ लेजेंडरी एक्टर एंड जब वो स्टार बने उसके पहले प्लेज करते थे एंड आफ्टर द प्लेज ही यूज्ड टू कैरी अ बॉल एंड स्टैंड आउट.
I'll tell that story. The very first play that I ever saw in my life was in Srinagar when I was 6 years old. And my parents took me to see this play. It's a play called Pathan, and it starred Prithviraj Kapoor. And Prithviraj Kapoor used to have his group of actors that would travel around trying to make money off acting. And I was just mesmerized by seeing this acting on stage, and this man, Prithviraj Kapoor, was larger than life. And when the play ended, I was in an absolute daze. And my parents and I came out into the foyer and we saw Prithviraj Kapoor standing there, still dressed in the clothes of the Pathan, with his eyes closed and his hands out like this. And people were putting money into his hands. And that's how he was making his money as an actor. And this man sired a whole generation of superstars, from Raj Kapoor, Shami Kapoor, Shashi Kapoor, Ranbir Kapoor, Kareena Kapoor, Karishma Kapoor. I mean, there's a whole line of Kapoors that this man gave birth to, from being a man that just loved acting, took a little money for tickets, and then made his living holding out his hands for alms at the end of every performance.
काफी झंझोड़ने वाली कथा थी ये जो आपने लिखी है. इसमें काफी दिल पसीज गया वो देखकर. उस समय तो एक्टिंग का वो पैसा नहीं मिलता था. Is it the same now, or do you see the new actors with the same passion?
Oh yes, oh yes. Today's actors have more passion, more skill, more technique, more commitment as a whole than our generation did. Because the competition today is so much more. You know, in those days, boys from good families were not supposed to become models or become actors, take a proper job, you know. Today's boys say, I want to be a doctor, an engineer. No, no, be a star, be a rock star, go become an actor, become famous, you know. So it's a different thing. I'm joking here, but basically, this generation of actors that's there is fantastic. And the good thing is they've got so many opportunities. They're not restricted just to the film made by Bollywood or South India. There's the OTT platforms that have come up now. They've created their own stars. There's a complete change in the nature of films and filmmaking. And we are witnessing something very, very important, that film is moving beyond the theatres. Theatres will always be there. They'll always be a very important part of viewing. We like watching things together. But equally, by extending the viewing into people's homes and creating new stars that are not dependent on the big stars of cinema, cinema has got a new freedom to create. And many great directors who couldn't get funds for their films today are more busy than they've ever been busy in their lives. So I salute what's happening in cinema and the new platforms and the new actors.
What do you like the most of all the women in your life? One word for each one of them.
Oh my God.
I'm not going to fall into that trap.
Okay.
Let me just say that all of them were remarkable women. All of them gave me a lot. And the fact that I was able to remain friends with them, even after we separated, I think speaks a lot about them and speaks a lot about our relationship. Wow. So I'm grateful for everything I got from them.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sir.
Thank you.
We really enjoyed talking to you, and it was fantastic.
How am I so fit in this age? I am blessed by my parents, by the body they gave me, the voice they gave me, the constitution they gave me. So I have to give my parents a lot of credit. मैं थोड़ी सी कसरत कर लेता हूँ, थोड़ा सा डाइट कंट्रोल कर लेता हूँ. Diet control नहीं in the sense I avoid sugar as much as possible. I minimize carbohydrates. I believe in the curative powers of haldi, turmeric. छोटी मोटे से नुस्खे होते हैं मेरे. But I can't claim any great credit for the state I'm in. I bless somebody up there for giving me whatever I have.
Good afternoon, sir. A question from my side. Sir, I would like to ask कि आपको हमारा इंदौर कैसा लगा?
अभी आया हूँ, अभी मिला हूँ. रिएक्शन बहुत अच्छा लगा मुझे. और वैसे भी मुझे बुक लवर्स के फेस्टिवल्स बहुत पसंद हैं, क्योंकि ये सब किताबों से प्रेम करते हैं, आपस में बातें करते हैं किताबों के बारे में, इंस्पायर होते हैं किताबों से. तो ऐसे लोग मुझे बहुत प्यारे लगने लगे हैं, क्योंकि मैंने खुद किताब लिखी है. But they are thinking people. Thank you. Sorry. I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
When I go through your book, you mention about a lot of success and a lot of failures. What will be your message to youth of today? You know, many times they've been bogged down by the failures they get in their life. A fighting spirit which is emerging out of that book. How to build that fighting muscle in one's life?
You know, everyone has a gift. Everyone has something that other people don't have. And if you can find a way of turning that difference into something that's useful for society, for bettering people's lives, for even helping market a product or helping create a new tune, you are expressing yourself. We live at the most exciting time in human history. Never before have there been so many opportunities around us created by the creative energy of people and the internet and the interactions of social media and groups coming together. Look at what's happening with the number of unicorns in India. Where are these people coming from? They're coming from the groundswell of ideas that are being realized. My advice to young people is, firstly, believe in yourself. Believe you have something to give. Because nobody gets something for nothing. Nobody runs charities. You have to give something to get back something. So if you have something to give, an idea, a concept, a new way of doing things, whatever it is, find a way to do things that you believe in. If you like what you do, you will never work for one day in your life. You will play for the rest of your life. So ideally, find something that you love doing. You know, my sister has been a teacher all her life for children with special needs. And she lives in Boston. And she said to me, when I went to visit her, you know, when I wake up in the morning, I can't wait to go to work. She loved what she did so much. And when I walked with her in the malls around Nashua where she lives, every half an hour or an hour, somebody would walk up saying, "Oh, Mrs. Myra, this is my wife, these are my children, I have a job now." She changed people's lives and she loved what she did. So if you love what you do, fantastic. If you can't do something that you love as a full-time job, do it as a part-time job. Find something else to do to keep the fires burning, but do what you love. Never give up on your creativity. My father used to believe that unexpressed creativity is the root of disease. And so whether you're a banker, or you're a person selling shoes, or you're a person trading stocks, keep alive the creative part of you that expresses itself. And if you're doing what you like, great. But always, if you're doing what you like for a living, great. But if you can't do it for a living, do it even as a hobby. Keep in touch with yourself and believe in yourself, because that belief, coupled with persistence, will get you where you want to.
आपके जीवन में 4 ब्यूटीफुल लेडीज आई हैं, तो आपसे बेहतर ये कोई नहीं जानता होगा कि महिलाओं के प्रति जो आजकल जेंडर इनइक्वालिटी चलती है, चाहे वो पूरी दुनिया की बात हो, हमारे देश की बात हो, तो मैं जानना चाहूँगा कि आप मुझे बताएं कि कैसे ये दुनिया जेंडर इनइक्वालिटी से दूर हो सकती है, क्योंकि आपके सानिध्य में, आपके जीवन में, चाहे आप रंगमंच पे काम करते रहे हो, चाहे बॉलीवुड में, बहुत सारी महिलाओं से आपका सामना हुआ, और ये इस समय देश की बड़ी गंभीर समस्या है, और ख़ासकर मैं पुरुषों के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से जानना चाहूँगा।
You talk about gender inequality in society in general. You know, society for centuries was patriarchal by its very nature. Men went to war, women tended the homes, etc. Over time, things have changed, and they're changing. I think today, when I look back 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, women have come a long, long way in these 50 years that I've been observing. And there's still a long way to go. In fact, in India, some of the laws are so pro-women that men are actually nervous about them. They're frightened by them. Because today, a man's career can be destroyed if a woman decides to name him, shame him, launch allegations against him. So these are huge changes. So I think nothing changes overnight, but given how many centuries of patriarchy existed, I think from the second half of the last century till today, women have come a long, long way, and I'm very happy to see it happen. Thank you, sir. You know, when you look back on your life, there's many things that you say, I wish I'd done this, I wish I'd done that. I could have done this, I could have gone there, I could have... You know, there's all these mistakes we make. There's all these regrets we have. But it's very important not to dwell on them. If I sit here thinking, what else could I have done differently 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I'm wasting precious time. I don't want to spend one more minute on regrets than I have already. Focus on the future, focus on hope, focus on what you want to get done. Focus on realizing your dreams, expressing yourself, raising families, spreading joy. What I could have done in the past better, who cares? It's gone, it's over. And I mourned for it. So let that be, let that be. Let's just celebrate what is and should be.